Hi Krishna, welcome everybody to another session of Bhagavad Gita. We are doing chapter 2. We are in chapter 2, text number 8 and 9 is what we will cover today. They are on page number 72 to 74 if you have a hardbound Bhagavad Gita and you are following along. We'll do a quick recap. Last session we saw Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text number 7, where Arjuna is wanting to stop the friendly talk with Krishna and he surrenders to Krishna as a disciple and he wants Krishna to guide him through the problems of life. We discussed the perplexities of life. What are the perplexities of life? We are always faced with some problem or the other. We don't ask for a problem, the problem just comes into our life. And we become busy solving the problem which we see in front of us. We saw a definition of perplexity by Gilbert. According to Gilbert, he is a famous writer and he says, there are too many things in life to do, and our perplexity is we can't do even one thing properly because we are so much distracted by so many things that we have on our plate to do. That's a nice way of defining perplexity. I shared it with one of my friend and she said, "Oh my gosh, it's the story of my life." Forest fire of material life. Forest fires just happen. We saw a pictorial diagram of this last session which covered how the forest fire happens. There is humid air, rain falls, and the humid air absorbs the rain even before the rain hits the ground. And what happens is when there is lightning at the same time, then forest fire happens. So nobody does anything, forest fire just happens. Similarly, nobody has to do anything. Material life is such that problems always exist. Who is the man in material perplexity? In our story of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is a man in material perplexity, and in our own life, we are the people who are in material perplexity. Some problem or the other hitting us every time. We also saw a miserly person story. I like that story. The person would come and keep the gold in the forest. He buried the gold in the forest, and every day he would come and look at the gold. Since he kept coming so many times, a thief observed and he saw that, oh, this person has dug the gold here. One day he came and took the gold, and the person started crying. Somebody asked him, "Hey, why are you crying?" He said, "You know what? I dug the gold here and somebody robbed me." And the person asked, "Well, why did you keep the gold here? Why did you not keep it in your house so you can use it whenever you need it?" And the miser said, "Well, I would have never used that gold." And so, in Bhagavad Gita, a person who never uses his life to achieve the goal of life is being referred to as a miser. We have the wealth of our life, and the purpose of life is to go back home, back to Godhead. If I don't use my life to attain that purpose, then Bhagavad Gita is calling me a miser. And then Arjuna, who is coming out of the miserly dress, and he surrenders unto Krishna, understanding that he wants to solve the problems of life. Agenda for today, we will be covering text number 8. We will see who is the man in Krishna consciousness. We will see how to solve the problems of life. We'll see text number 9 of chapter 2, and we will see Dhritarashtra's joy frustrated. We'll start with prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master who, with the torchlight of knowledge, has opened my eyes which were blinded by the darkness of ignorance. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. My dear Lord, and the spiritual energy of the Lord, kindly engage me in your service. I am now embarrassed with this material service. Please engage me in your service. Text number 8 of chapter 2 reads, translation, I can find no means to drive away this grief which is drying up my senses. I will not be able to dispel it even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom on earth with sovereignty like that of the demigods in heaven. Arjuna is saying that he is experiencing grief and this grief is drying up his senses. What is Arjuna's grief? Arjuna's grief is he is standing on the battlefield ready to kill his teacher and his grandfather, and he is asking himself a question. After killing all these great souls, even if I get a kingdom which is equal to the kingdom of demigods, how will I be able to dispel this grief which I will have after I kill these great souls? Not only great souls, but my family, my cousins. With such a grief, Arjuna is approaching Krishna. Who is the man in Krishna consciousness? One needs to know the science of Krishna to solve the real problems of life. A man in Krishna consciousness is the man who knows what the real problems of life are and how to solve those problems. According to Bhagavad Gita, he is the man in Krishna consciousness. What are the problems of life? The problems of life are birth, death, old age, and disease. Everybody has these 4 problems. Nobody can raise their hand and say, hey, I'm free from birth, I'm free from old age, I'm free from disease, or I'm free from death. Everybody has this problem. It comes as a package when we come to the material world. And Bhagavad Gita is saying these problems cannot be counteracted by accumulation of wealth and economic development. Today, the way our society is geared up, we are all into accumulating wealth and aggravating the economy. We want economic development and we want to acquire wealth to get that economic development. And Bhagavad Gita is saying, by the way, the real problems of life cannot be solved by wealth and economic development. One can achieve real happiness. How can I achieve real happiness? One can achieve real happiness only if one consults Krishna or the Bhagavad Gita, which constitutes the science of Krishna through the bona fide representative of Krishna, the man in Krishna consciousness. Who's the man in Krishna consciousness? The man in Krishna consciousness is the spiritual master who knows the problems of life, who knows how to solve the problems of life because he knows the science of Krishna. Since Krishna created this whole world, only one who knows the science of Krishna can help oneself and can help others get free from this cycle of birth and death. How to solve the problems of life? When the results of pious activities are finished, one falls down again from the peak of happiness to the lowest status of life. Many politicians of the world have fallen down in that way. Such downfall only constitute more causes for lamentation. This is directly taken from the purport of text number 8. Prabhupada saying, if my life is geared towards doing pious activities, one fine day all my pious activities will come to an end and I will fall back into this material world. So, a myth usually is people say, hey, don't do impious activities, do pious activities. Bhagavad Gita is saying, do your activities as a dedication to Krishna. Even pious activities will bring you in another body. If you want to end the cycle of birth and death, do your activities as a dedication to Krishna. Therefore, if we want to curb lamentation for good, then we have to take shelter of Krishna, as Arjuna is seeking to do. So, Arjuna asked Krishna to solve his problem definitely, and that is the way of Krishna consciousness. So, we pray to Krishna that Krishna, please help me solve the problems of life. And that is how I can approach the problems of life and get rid of them. Moving on, text number 9 says, Sanjaya said, having spoken thus, Arjuna, chastiser of enemies, told Krishna, Govinda, I shall not fight, and fell silent. So Arjuna is thinking of his grief, and he's thinking, even if I get an unrivaled kingdom equal to that of demigods, I will not be able to dispel my grief which I will incur by killing my teacher, my grandfather, my cousins, my family members. Now, coming back, the story of Bhagavad Gita is being narrated by Sanjaya to Dhritarashtra, sitting in the palace because Sanjaya was given the eyesight to see what's happening in the battlefield by his guru Vyasadeva. So Sanjaya is narrating this whole story of Bhagavad Gita to Dhritarashtra. And when Dhritarashtra hears that Arjuna does not want to fight, Dhritarashtra is very happy because if Arjuna doesn't fight, there are chances that his sons will win the war. And what does Sanjaya do? Although Arjuna was, for the time being, overwhelmed with false grief due to family affection, he surrendered unto Krishna, the supreme spiritual master, as a disciple. So, if I am overcome by grief due to any situation, I have any problem, the solution Bhagavad Gita is recommending is surrender unto Krishna. And Arjuna is modeling for us that example of surrendering unto Krishna. This indicated Arjuna's surrender to Krishna indicated that he would soon be free from the false lamentation. Although Arjuna has false lamentation, because Arjuna surrendered to Krishna, it is very clear that very soon Arjuna will be free from that lamentation. We might have hundreds of problems. If we surrender unto Krishna, we can be sure that we will receive the strength from Him to deal and face those problems. So Arjuna's surrender to Krishna indicated that he would soon be free from false lamentation resulting from family affection and would be enlightened with perfect knowledge of self-realization or Krishna consciousness and would then surely fight. So Sanjaya is destroying the joy of Dhritarashtra by saying, don't be overexcited that now your sons will win the war because Arjuna is not fighting. Look at what's happening. Arjuna is surrendering to Krishna, and by that surrender, the false lamentation that Arjuna is into right now will be very soon gone, and Arjuna will achieve the perfect knowledge of self-realization or Krishna consciousness, and then he would surely fight. Summary for today, we saw text number 8 and we saw text number 9. Arjuna is saying, Krishna, even if I get a kingdom as good as the demigods, I will not be able to overcome the grief of killing my grandfather, teachers, cousins. So Arjuna says, Krishna, I am not going to fight. We saw who is a man in Krishna consciousness. The man in Krishna consciousness is the man who knows the real problems of life and who knows the signs of Krishna by which he can solve those real problems of life. He is the spiritual master. In Arjuna's case, Krishna is his spiritual master and Arjuna surrenders unto Krishna, his spiritual master, to get the solution of his false lamentation. And the story is being narrated by Sanjaya to Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra becomes really happy thinking, oh, Arjuna is saying I'm not going to fight, my sons are going to win the war. And Sanjaya frustrates the joy of Dhritarashtra by saying, hey, Arjuna has surrendered to a bona fide spiritual master and Arjuna will be soon relieved from this false lamentation and will achieve the perfection of life, which is Krishna consciousness. Okay, if you have any questions, please feel free to text them via the Facebook chat. I will be happy to answer your questions. Thank you all for watching. Hare Krishna.